Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This commentary for The Leftovers, Season 1, Episode 5, Gladys. And this episode kind of made me think one thing. Made me think about a few things, but one thing kind of that the show is kind of struggling with some things. I think this show needs to find its audience, and it's not, because I know a lot of people don't like this show. They think it's too depressing or whatever. For me, I really love this show. I love what it's doing, especially last week. This episode for me, it was pretty much filler. It was filler. It really was. I mean, it had a lot of stuff that happened in it. Yes, there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened, but the main plot was basically filler because this character died and we're never going to see her again. They're never going to talk about her again. So, this episode was pretty much filler, and that's a problem, definitely. This show did not need to be filler. It really did not need to be. Let's get to it, though. We get a very grisly, death right away. We see, the GR, and two of the people are told to basically leave, and they're walking around and they're very cruel to this one guy. There's like this guy who's like unconscious. They just leave him there. They're very cruel to him. And basically this girl Gladys and this other girl are walking. Gladys goes towards this gas station. The other girl goes into a convenience store. And while Gladys is at this gas station, she is attacked. Two men basically grab her, and she's one of the GR, obviously. She ends up being, stoned to death. She tells them to stop, and they don't stop. And it's a very grisly scene, because she's like, stop, and they don't stop, obviously. So, that definitely is a huge thing right there, and she ends up dying. So, basically, what ends up happening is, when Patti, the GR's Glum leader, learns that Gladys had disappeared, she dispatches everyone to search the woods where she went missing, and Laurie comes across the battered body and is so traumatized she has a panic attack and ends up in the emergency room. We'll talk about Laurie a little later on, but Kevin learns of the death on a day that started out surreal, with shirts missing from his closet, and the burglar alarm in his house acting up. He rushes over and he wakes up Amy and Jill and says, hey, have any of you seen my shirts? Because it's kind of like the disappearing bagel thing. He rushes over to the scene of the stoning and he spots the mysterious sharpshooter who has been killing the town's dogs. We still don't know this guy's name. Keep in mind, we don't know his name yet. So Kevin's next stop is the high school, where his daughter Jill and, her friend Amy are willing away their science lab, seeing how long they can hold their hand over a Bunsen burner flame. Jill bursts into tears as soon as she sees her father, and because she pretty much thinks something bad's happened to Laurie, which, as we know, something bad did happen to her. But he says, oh, no, your mother's fine, nothing bad happened to her. But he says that something bad has indeed happened to another member of the GR. So, Kevin's investigation into the stoning is getting off to a bad start. He rages at a deputy who mistakenly has tried to cede the case to the FBI, and Mayor Lucy Warburton intervenes. She backs Kevin in a turf war and agrees to ask the city council to impose a curfew. Because basically they want to impose a curfew so that way, if there are bad criminals out there, because they know that someone is out there that is attacking these harmless people. Well, we know the GR is not so harmless, but, people like Gladys, if someone is out there attacking people, they need to make a curfew so that way this won't happen to, say, teenage girls, because they're worried something bad's going to happen to everyone. So, basically, Kevin is still baffled by his empty closet, and because he can't find his white shirts, he doesn't know where he thinks he's going crazy again. So he goes to the dry cleaners, and it turns out there's no white shirts. He leaves another message for the FBI agent about the stoning case, and he's trying to call off the federal involvement. And he brings in Reverend Matt Jameson for questioning, but he has an alibi. He was with his Bible study group when the stoning happened. And the clergyman asked to see the body and pray for the dead women. Now, as we know, Matt and the GR are not on the best of terms because the GR took his church, obviously, and we haven't really seen anything else with that since episode 3, and that's one of the problems with this show for me, is its inconsistencies. The show is not really consistent. It introduces a new plot every single episode, which is fine, but it doesn't really have big, cliffhangers, really. It's not one of those kind of shows. Basically, after Kevin says no, he is summoned to address the public meeting where the city council will vote on the curfew, and things swiftly go off the rails. The restive audience is incensed, and Kevin gets into a shouting match with the sharpshooter, who pipes up the curfew, doesn't seem fair, because they didn't do anything wrong. The council unanimously rejects the proposal, so that obviously was not good. So Kevin then heads over to chastise the GR about antagonizing the people of Mapleton, because he's kind of sick of them. And basically he warns, if you keep following people around, they will retaliate, and distributes whistles for them to use if in danger. Basically, so if this happens again, they have whistles, and this is not going to happen to anyone. Basically, Kevin then spots Meg and asks about Laurie, and instead of engaging conversation, she's very, chilly about it. She's pointing out to Kevin, and it was very creepy, actually. She's like, she's not your wife anymore. I mean, the way she said that was so creepy. And honestly, I don't know, what that exactly means. I kind of know what it means, but when we get to Laurie's plot, I think I'll talk about it. But basically, Kevin relents about letting Reverend Matt pray over Gladys' body and collects the clergyman. And as they drive over the morgue, Matt quotes aloud from the Bible. His message is lost on the bemused Kevin. And I thought this was really interesting what he says to Kevin. He tells Kevin that the members of GR are already dead and he hopes to bring them back to life. And I understand why he's saying this. Think about it. They don't talk. They don't make contact with anyone. They stand there. They write signs. They smoke. They don't talk to each other. They're basically dead. They're in this cult. They're basically dead. And he needs to bring them back to life. Basically make them have faith again, because they don't have any faith. And I think that's pretty much why this cult has started, because they don't have any faith in anything. And that's why they took his church, because the church is a holy thing. The church is a holy thing to him. That goes with prayer and things like that, and now Matt doesn't have a church and everything, so obviously, he is going to try to bring their faith back. So, I'll talk about what happens there when we get to Laurie's plot, but I thought that was definitely very interesting. So, Kevin then sees a morgue worker who tells him that they are too late, and following an email request that morning, they ship the bodies to the FBI in Virginia, and Kevin is very, apocalyptic. He calls the FBI agent and screams into his voicemail, threatening to drive down and retrieve the body himself, and even threatens to kill him. And later, Kevin finally speaks to the FBI agent, who defuses the call by noting he never received any of Kevin's phone messages. So, luckily, the agent's very easygoing, and he also gives Kevin some chilling advice. He says, don't worry about your victim, worry about your town. He then goes on to suggest that Kevin accepts the FBI's offer to, in effect, send in a SWAT team to wipe out the GR. And he says, just say the word and everything will go back to normal. The voice of the other end of the phone promises. A stunned Kevin demurs, no thanks, we can handle it. The FBI agent signs off saying, good luck with that, chief. And that evening, Kevin's finally got the burglar alarm under control, because that was like a huge thing in the episode, but he couldn't get the fucking burglar alarm under control. And basically, he goes on a beer run to sustain him through a soggy evening of coming to terms with her divorce, because, Laurie does want to get a divorce with him. And in town, he stumbles over to the and that's why Meg basically said to him, look, she's not your wife anymore, because, basically she's not, because they're getting a divorce. So, in town, he stumbles over to the dry cleaners, pounds on the door, and screams for his missing shirts, and the clerk is seeing that there is no turning the police chief away, because obviously he's the police. What is he going to do, send the police on the police? He grabs a random armful full of iron shirts, and presses them on Kevin, and Kevin hangs them up on his home, and he tells Jill, who is uncharacteristically pleasant. This is like the first time we've seen Jill, pleasant in the show, and, he finally tells her about the divorce, and it was a very sad scene to watch. I thought this was probably the best scene in the show so far, in my opinion, because you really felt the emotion here. It was one of the first times in the show you really felt emotion for him, and you see Jill actually is okay with it, but I think Jill really does care, but she's actually okay with it. But then you see, as Jill walks away, Kevin cries into his pillow. He's obviously very upset at what's going on, and it's really sad, honestly, that's happening. I mean, definitely very, very sad, and I really, felt bad for Kevin in that scene, definitely. It's gonna be sad to see what happens, but I definitely think him and Laurie, they're actually gonna have an actual conversation going with Laurie's plot. And basically, at the end of the episode, we'll talk about what happened to Gladys, but, yeah, so that was definitely very interesting with Kevin. I thought Kevin's plot was very interesting, in my opinion. Basically, that was definitely very interesting. Let's go to Laurie. As I said, Laurie did end up having a panic attack. She did end up in the emergency room. And when she left the hospital, Patti was waiting outside for her. And as they drive off, Laurie asks, via a scribbled note where they are headed, and there's no reply from Patti. She simply turns on the radio, drives, and as they are stepping back into normal life before the sudden departure, they stop at a motel, and Patti instructs her in writing to get some rest. Now, Laurie is feeling a bit of sea in the real world after 8 months in the cult. She finally sleeps, and she wakes up in the morning and puts on the colored shirt and skirt and high heels that Patti has left her, rather than the GR's usual shapeless white muffy. And at breakfast, Laurie discovers that Patti is not only wearing regular clothes, she's also eating normal food and talking. And she urges Laurie to follow suit. You are overdue for a day off. And basically, they get 1 day off to talk, and she wants Laurie to talk. And Laurie manages a normal breakfast, but can't bring herself to speak. In my opinion, I'm pretty sure that Laurie forgot how to talk, because she hasn't talked for 8 months, and she doesn't know how to talk anymore. I mean, if she probably forgot how to talk. That's what I'm pretty sure is going on there. Basically, then what ends up happening is, at the diner with Laurie, Patti then turns very serious and menacing. She tells Laurie, Gladys, and it's, like, really creepy what she tells her. She says, Gladys also did the same thing, never talked, always stayed, committed, always questioned, I questioned her commitment, and she never talked. And, she tells her that, I'm gonna say the same thing Gladys said to you. If you want to be safe, then you need to talk. Now, basically, it's not clear if Patti had something to do with Gladys' demise. However, she does grasp Laurie's wrist and insists that now is not the time to weaken and return to her family and the past. So basically, she wants Laurie to actually go back to Kevin and her family for a day and basically have some closure with them, I guess. I don't really know what she wants her to do, pretty much, but it's going to be interesting to see what definitely happens there. And, yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens, but basically, he hopes to, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. So, yeah, I thought that was definitely a very interesting scene, and what ends up happening after this is, as I said before, Matt wanted to, give them some faith, basically, and they reach the GR house. They find Meg clad in white and bearing a sign reading, "I'm ready now." Basically, this means that Meg is no longer going to talk. She is now okay to accept the things that the GR does. She's not going to talk anymore. And basically, Patti beams their decision, and they hear voices. And it's Reverend Matt. He's leading a prayer vigil for Gladys outside the house, and he invites members of the GR to join him. However, rather than, Laurie walks outside as she approaches. Matt gives her a welcoming smile, but rather than praying with him, she starts blowing her whistle to alert the police, because they are against religion, obviously. As I said, they are against religion. They're against the idea of it. They don't like it. And basically, the body of Gladys is at the morgue in Virginia. She is transferred from its shipping crate to a conveyor belt leading to a crematorium. In the final moments, the cadaver inches forward into the flames, and basically Gladys is cremated. And that's how the episode ended. So, obviously, let's talk about a couple things I want to talk about in the episode. Kevin. I really feel bad for Kevin. I mean, he is going to have to accept this divorce. I mean, definitely something is going to happen with Laurie, because Patti told her specifically, you need to talk. Obviously, I'm pretty sure Laurie is going to talk. Let's talk about some of the things I don't like the show is doing. It's not consistent. It really is not consistent. The Gladys plot was barely even in the episode. I mean, even though the episode was called Gladys, that was barely the episode. They kept referring to her as she and her. They barely called her Gladys. A couple other problems I had with it was there was no Tommy in this episode. There was no Tom. No, Tom's plot was not in the episode. Neither was Jill's plot. The Carver twins, I don't know what their names are, but, where were they? I don't know. They were not in the episode. The twins were not in the episode. What else? Who else was in the episode? So yes, she was not in the episode. I mean, they were not in the episode. Annie was in the episode, and Jill was in the episode, but she didn't have really much of a plot, except it had to do with Kevin. Is Kevin going crazy? I mean, he keeps losing his white shirts, he keeps losing his bagel. Why does this stuff keep happening to him? I don't know. As far as Laurie goes, Laurie is going to have to talk. She's going to have to talk if she doesn't want to end up like Gladys. Something is going to happen with her. We'll have to see what ends up happening. Now, is Matt going to be able to restore faith in them? I definitely think he needs to, because the GR needs faith again. They need to have that faith back, and they don't have it right now. So, Matt's going to have to restore that faith back into them. It's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be able to restore that faith back into them. And basically, again, Kevin needs to come to terms with that he's getting that divorce. Definitely something's going to happen there. Now, as far as Meg goes, Meg is, as we know, is now going to accept the decisions that the GR is making. Now, my problem with this show is that this show is supposed to be about the rapture and why why everyone was disappearing and things like that. And they're not really bringing it up. The last time they brought up why all of this is happening is episode 3. That's when they brought up why this, sudden departure is happening. That's when they brought it up. They did not bring it up anymore since then. And I really hope they bring it up soon, because that's what the show's about. The show's not about the GR. It's about why everyone just disappeared. That's why it's called The Leftovers. I'm pretty sure this show still needs to find its audience, okay? The show is kind of struggling. I do think it's going to improve, but it does need to find its audience, in my opinion. And in my opinion, it just needs to find its audience. And once it finds its audience, it can become a better show. And I really hope it does become a better show, because overall, I've really enjoyed this show. This episode was probably the best episode so far, even though I did have a couple key problems with it. There are some things that I had problems with, but I did really like the way the episode ended. I liked the way the episode turned out. But overall, that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys have problems with the show. Overall, I do have many problems with the show, but I think the show can improve itself. That's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for another classic movie. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.